With 36 years of service, he received only a plot full of rocks. But destiny surprised him. Harold Mitchell felt his legs tremble as he walked through the corridors of the construction company where he had dedicated more than half of his life. The white envelope in his hands weighed like lead, carrying within it the end of an era that had begun when he was still a young man full of dreams and hopes. What he didn't imagine was that this piece of paper would change his life in a way he could never have foreseen. After 36 years carrying bricks, mixing cement and building other people's dreams, all he would receive as recognition was a plot of land that not even his own boss wanted for himself. "Harold, you can come in now," said the secretary with a forced smile. He took a deep breath and pushed open the door to the main office. Mr. Vincent Harrington was sitting behind his mahogany desk, his impeccable red suit contrasting with the cynical smile he never hid when dealing with his humblest employees. "Have a seat, Harold. We have important matters to settle today." The worker settled into the chair, his calloused fingers gripping the envelope tightly. He had waited for this moment for weeks, ever since he had turned 65 and decided to retire from the company he had helped grow brick by brick. "Mr. Vincent, I wanted to thank you for all these years. I know I wasn't the most educated employee, but I always gave my best for the company." Harrington let out a short, unpleasant laugh. "Ah, Harold, always so humble. That's exactly why I've prepared something special for you. A bonus for your dedication." The businessman opened a drawer and took out an official document. The yellowed pages looked old, as if they had been stored away for a long time, waiting for this moment. "These are the deeds to a plot of land. It's registered in your name as of today." Harold felt his heart race. A plot of land? After so many years renting small houses and apartments, would he finally have something that was truly his? I don't know what to say, Mr. Vincent. You didn't have to." "Of course I did, Harold. You deserve exactly this." There was something in the boss's tone of voice that made Harold uncomfortable, but he attributed it to his own insecurity. He had never received such a valuable gift in his life. "Where is this plot located, sir?" "It's in the White Rock area, about 40 kilometers from here. A very distinctive place. I'm sure you'll love the local peculiarities." Harrington extended the deeds to Harold, who received them with trembling hands. His name was really there, written out in full on official documents. "Can I go see the plot today?" "Yes, you can. In fact, I insist. Let's go together. I want to see your reaction when you see your new property in person." An hour later, the two men were driving down the dirt road leading to the White Rock area. Harold watched the landscape through the window of his boss's luxury car, imagining what it would be like to build his own house in that remote location away from the city. "Mr. Vincent, may I ask a question?" "Of course, Harold, feel free." "Why are you being so generous with me? I mean, other employees who retired got a party and a watch. This is much more than I expected." Harrington looked in the rearview mirror, his eyes gleaming with poorly disguised malice. "Let's just say you've always been special, Harold. And special people deserve special gifts." The ironic tone did not go unnoticed, but Harold chose to believe in the generosity of the moment. After decades of hard work, perhaps his dedication was finally being recognized. When they arrived at the location, Harold got out of the car and stood still for a few minutes, trying to process what he saw. Before him stretched a plot of approximately 2,000 square meters, but not a single centimeter of visible soil remained. Everything was covered with stones of all sizes, from small pebbles to enormous rocks that seemed to have been placed there by some force of nature. "Here it is, Harold, your new property. 2,000 square meters of pure potential." Harrington couldn't contain a scornful smile as he watched the shock on his employee's face. "Mr. Vincent, are you sure this is the right plot? Because there's nothing but stone here." "Stones, Harold. Stones are all you deserve after so many years of being just another brick in the construction of my empire." The mask of kindness had completely fallen away. Harrington laughed loudly, pointing at the rocks covering every meter of the property. "Did you really think I would give something of value to someone like you? A pawn who never amounted to more than a material carrier? This land is useless, Harold. No one can plant anything here. No one can build anything here. It's exactly what you deserve." Harold felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. The humiliation burned more than any physical exhaustion he had ever felt on the construction sites. "But sir, I was always a good employee. I never missed a day, I never complained about the pay." "Exactly, Harold. You were always too compliant. You never questioned, never demanded more. People like you are born to serve, and this plot is the most someone like you can aspire to in life." The businessman returned to his car, leaving Harold alone amidst the stones. "I'll leave you here to contemplate your new wealth. You can take a bus back when you get tired of admiring your rocks." The sound of the engine fading away echoed among the boulders, leaving a heavy silence that seemed to amplify Harold's humiliation. He walked slowly across the land, his feet stumbling over the smaller stones as he tried to process what had just happened. At 65 years old, after a lifetime dedicated to honest work, he had been reduced to a cruel joke. The tears rolling down his face tasted of injustice and disappointment. But as he walked among the stones, something inside him began to harden. It wasn't anger, for Harold had never been one to hold a grudge. It was something different, a quiet determination that grew with every step he took on that seemingly useless land. "If this is what I deserve," he murmured to himself, "then I'll show what someone like me can do with stones." The walk to the nearest bus stop took almost an hour. The entire way, Harold mentally formulated a plan. He would not allow Harrington's cruelty to define the end of his story. When he arrived home that night, his wife Dorothy was waiting for him with a simple but lovingly prepared dinner. She immediately noticed the dejection on her husband's face. "How was the retirement, Harold? Was the boss generous?" He hesitated for a moment, not wanting to transfer his pain to the woman who had shared all of life's hardships with him. "It was different than I expected, Dorothy. He gave me a plot of land." "A plot of land? Oh my, what a wonderful gift. Where is it?" "In White Rock. It's a unique place." Dorothy sensed there was more to the story, but decided not to press her husband at that moment. She had known Harold for 40 years and knew when he needed time to gather his thoughts. Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. During the following week, Harold returned to the plot every day. He brought water, some basic tools, and spent hours studying every meter of that place that seemed forgotten by the world. The stones varied in size and shape, but they all seemed to have one thing in common. They had been there a long time. On the third day, he met Mr. Edgar, a man of nearly 80 who lived in a simple little house about 500 meters from the plot. "Good morning, young man. Are you the new owner of that rocky patch?" "Yes, sir. Harold Mitchell. Pleased to meet you." "Edgar Thompson. I've lived here for over 50 years. I've never seen anyone have the courage to buy that land. Do you know anything about the history of the place?" Edgar scratched his grey beard, looking thoughtfully at the stones. "I know a few things. My father used to say that this land used to be different, but then some very heavy rains came, back in the 1960s, and brought all these stones down from somewhere up the mountain. Do you think it's possible to do anything with this land?" "Son, I'll be frank with you. I've seen many people try. Some wanted to clear it to plant, others wanted to build. They all gave up. There are too many stones and some are as big as a house." Harold thanked him for the information and went home even more thoughtful. Dorothy noticed that her husband had been different since he got the land, but he hadn't yet told her all the details of what had happened. "Harold, can you properly explain to me what kind of land this is? For a week now you've been leaving every day and coming back with your head down." He took a deep breath and decided to tell the truth. "Dorothy, Harrington didn't give me this land as a thank you. He gave it to me to humiliate me. The place is nothing but stones. You can't do anything with it. He said it was exactly what I deserved." Dorothy felt anger rise like fire in her chest. She had stood by her husband all those years, seen how he came home exhausted, with his hands injured, but always speaking well of his boss and the company. "That man is a monster, Harold. How can he do this to you after so many years?" "Getting angry won't help, woman. What's done is done, but I'm not going to let it slide." "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm going to build something on that land, even if it's just to prove he was wrong about me." Dorothy looked into her husband's eyes and saw a determination she hadn't seen in years. At that moment, she made a decision that would change both their lives. "Then we'll build it together, Harold. If that's what you want to do, I'll help you." "Dorothy, you don't understand. They're enormous stones. It will be years of work and maybe we won't even get anywhere." "I understand perfectly. And that's exactly why I'm going to help you. That man humiliated my husband, and nobody humiliates the Mitchell family without an answer." That night, the two planned how they would approach the challenge. They had no money to hire machines or workers, so they would have to rely only on their own strength and determination. "The first thing we need to do is remove the small and medium stones," said Harold. "The big ones will have to break." "And where are we going to put these stones?" "I thought about making walls, maybe even sell some to people who need stone for construction." For the next 2 weeks, Harold and Dorothy established a routine. They woke up at 5 in the morning, had a simple coffee and headed to the land. They worked until noon, returned home for lunch and rest, and went back in the late afternoon until sunset. The work was exhausting. Some stones were so heavy that it took both of them to move them just a few meters. Harold used an old sledgehammer to break the larger rocks, and Dorothy sorted the fragments by size. "Harold, your arms are all bruised. I think we should stop for a bit." "I can't stop, Dorothy. Every stone we remove from here is an answer to what that man did to me." "But you're not 20 anymore. You have to take care of your health." "Health recovers, woman. Dignity doesn't." Harold's determination was contagious, and Dorothy found herself working with an energy she hadn't felt in years. There was something liberating about breaking those rocks, as if each swing of the sledgehammer was also a way to break the chains of a lifetime of submission. After 3 weeks of intense work, they managed to clear an area of approximately 100 square meters. It was little compared to the total size of the lot, but it represented an important symbolic victory. "Look at this, Harold, we did it." "We did, Dorothy, and this is just the beginning." It was at that moment that an unexpected visitor appeared. Dennis Parker, an old colleague of Harold's from the construction company, had heard about the lot and decided to stop by to see how his friend was doing. "Harold, man, what a surprise to find you here." "Dennis, how did you know I was here?" "Buddy, the news of your retirement gift spread through the whole company. Everyone found out that Harrington gave you a lot full of rocks." Harold felt his cheeks burn with shame, so everyone knew about the humiliation he had gone through. "So, did you come to laugh at me too?" "Come on, Harold. I came here because I was outraged. 36 years working for that bastard, and he does this to you. It's a rotten thing to do." Dennis looked around and noticed the work that had been done. "Hold on. You're really clearing this lot?" "We're trying," replied Dorothy. "You guys are crazy. This will take a lifetime of work." "Maybe," said Harold, "but it's better than silently accepting the humiliation." Dennis walked through the cleared area, impressed with what the couple had managed in such a short time. "You know what, Harold? I retired last month too. I got a party with a stale cake and a watch that's already stopped working. Compared to this, I think you came out ahead." "How so?" "Man, you have 2,000 square meters all to yourself. You can do whatever you want here. And looking at it now, after being cleared, it's a beautiful lot. It has a view of the mountains. The air is pure. There's space to build a big house." Harold had never thought about it from that angle. He was so focused on proving he could overcome the challenge that he hadn't stopped to appreciate the real qualities of the place. "You're right, Dennis. It really is a beautiful place. And another thing. Are you guys doing this work alone?" "We are. We don't have money to hire anyone." "That's nonsense, buddy. I'm retired and bored. My wife keeps complaining that I stay at home doing nothing. If you'll let me, I'll come lend a hand." Dorothy and Harold looked at each other in surprise. They didn't expect anyone to offer to help voluntarily. "Dennis, this is heavy work, and we don't even know if it will work out." "That's exactly why I want to help. And another thing, I know 2 or 3 more retirees from the company who are in the same situation as me. Guys who worked with you and were outraged by what Harrington did." "Really?" "Really. Frank, Walter, and Raymond. They all said they wanted to do something to help you but didn't know how. If you're up for it, we can form a crew and speed up this work." Harold felt his eyes fill with tears. After so many years feeling alone and insignificant at work, discovering he had friends who cared about him was a new and comforting feeling. "I accept the help, Dennis, but I can't pay anything." "Who said anything about payment? We have fun, get exercise, and still teach Harrington a lesson. It's a double win." The following week, Harold's lot transformed into a kind of social center for retirees. Dennis brought the promised friends, and each of them brought their own tools and experience. Frank had worked as a plumber and knew a lot about drainage systems. Walter had been a carpenter before becoming a mason, and Raymond understood electricity. Together they formed a complete construction team. "Harold, we need to think strategically," said Frank during a snack break. "It's no use just clearing the land. We have to have a plan for what we're going to build. I thought about building a simple house just to prove it's possible to build here." "Simple house, my foot," protested Walter. "With the amount of stone we have here, we could build a mansion, and stone is expensive material, you know." "A mansion? You're crazy. I don't have money for that." "Harold, you're not understanding," said Raymond. "The raw material is right here. The labor is us. What's missing? Cement, steel, lumber. We can get those things. I still have some contacts with suppliers who owe favors to the guys here." Dorothy watched the conversation with a growing smile on her face. For the first time in a long while, she saw her husband truly excited, making plans and dreaming of possibilities. "And there's another thing," continued Dennis. "Harrington isn't the only construction company in town. There are other businesses that buy stone. We can sell what's left over and use the money to buy the other materials." The idea was so simple that Harold wondered why he hadn't thought of it before. The stones that seemed like an obstacle could become a source of income. "Do you really think someone would buy these stones?" "Of course," said Walter. "Stone of this quality is in demand. There's wall construction, paving, garden decoration. Demand is high." That same afternoon, Dennis called an acquaintance who worked at a landscaping company. The man came in person to see the stones and was immediately interested. "These stones are of excellent quality. How much do you want per cubic meter?" Harold had no idea what to charge, but Dennis stepped in with experience. "It depends on the quantity you want to take." After some negotiation, they closed the first sale. 5 cubic meters of medium-sized stones for an amount that would cover the purchase of cement for 3 months of work. "Harold, do you see?" said Dorothy as she counted the money. "What seemed like a curse is turning into a blessing. It's still early to celebrate, woman, but I admit things are taking a different turn than I imagined." The work continued at a brisk pace. The team of retirees had developed an efficient dynamic. While some broke the larger stones, others sorted them by size and type, and a third group handled cleaning and leveling the land. In 2 months, they managed to clear more than half the land and make 3 stone sales. The money was being religiously saved for the construction materials. It was during the clearing of an area near the back of the property that they made the first significant discovery. Walter was removing a pile of stones when he noticed the soil underneath was wetter than normal. "Everyone, come look at this." They all gathered and saw a small area where the ground was soaked, even though it hadn't rained for days. "Looks like there's water springing up down here," observed Frank. "This could be a problem," said Dennis. "If there's a lot of groundwater, it could be tricky to build on." "Or it could be a solution," argued Raymond. "Good water is a wonder. You wouldn't need to rely on the supply company." Harold observed the damp area with curiosity. There was something familiar about that spot, as if he'd seen something similar somewhere before. "I think we'd better dig a little here to see what it is," he suggested. They spent the rest of the afternoon carefully digging around the damp area. At 3 meters deep, they found a small spring of crystal-clear water bubbling straight from the rock. "My goodness," murmured Dorothy. "Is this really water?" Harold bent down and touched the water with his fingers. It was cold and clean, completely different from the piped water they were used to using. "Frank, you're the one who understands these things. What do you think?" The former plumber examined the spring with professional care. "Harold, this here is a natural spring. The water is bubbling up directly from the water table. It's top-quality water. Is that good or bad?" "It's a blessing, my boy. There are people who pay a fortune to have spring water on their property, and by the volume coming out there must be a good reserve underneath." Dennis suggested they take a water sample for analysis before doing anything. It's better to be sure everything is right with the quality before celebrating. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. 3 days later, the analysis results arrived and brought an even bigger surprise than they had imagined. The spring water wasn't just drinkable, it was mineral water of the highest quality, with scientifically recognized therapeutic properties. "Harold, you need to read this," said Dorothy, holding the report with trembling hands. He took the papers and tried to decipher the technical terms, but the scientific language was hard to understand. "What does all this mean?" "It means you have a gold mine under these rocks," explained Dennis, who had taken a copy of the report to a chemist he knew. "This water has rare minerals, it's naturally alkaline, and has anti-inflammatory properties. But what does that mean in practice?" "It means this water is worth more than gold, Harold. There are companies that would pay millions to have access to a spring like this." The news left the whole group silent for a few minutes. It was hard to believe that the land considered useless was revealing hidden treasures. "And now what do we do?" asked Dorothy. "The first thing is to protect the spring," said Frank. "Can't let anyone contaminate or damage it. And the second thing is to decide what to do with this information," added Walter. Harold became thoughtful. He knew that discovery would change everything, but he wasn't sure how to proceed. His whole life had been simple, and now he found himself facing a complex situation. "I think I need to talk to someone who understands these legal things. I want to be sure this water is really ours." Dennis suggested they seek out the lawyer Charles Bennett, who had represented some former employees of the construction company in labor matters. "Charles is a good and honest guy. He'll know how to guide you properly." The next day, Harold and Dorothy went to the lawyer's office. Charles was a man of about 50, with greying hair and a paternal manner that inspired trust. "Mr. Harold, from what Dennis told me, you've made an interesting discovery on the land." "That's right, sir. We found a spring, and they say the water is valuable." Charles carefully examined the land deeds and the water report. "Well, the good news is the land is properly registered in your name, including rights to underground water resources. The bad news is that if this information leaks prematurely, you could have problems." "What kind of problems?" "Big companies might try to contest ownership, the government might want to regulate the water use, and there's always the risk of someone trying to take what's yours by force." Harold felt a shiver down his spine. For the first time in his life, he was in possession of something truly valuable, and it brought responsibilities and dangers he didn't know how to face. "What do you recommend we do?" "First, let's officially register the discovery of the spring with the proper authorities. Second, we'll do all the necessary technical reports to prove the water's quality and volume. Third, we'll study the best options to exploit this resource sustainably and profitably." "And how much will all this cost?" "For you, nothing. I'll draw up a partnership contract. When you start profiting from the water, you pay me a percentage. In the meantime, I'll handle all the legal aspects." It was a generous offer, and Harold accepted without hesitation. He felt he finally had someone qualified on his side to navigate that new world of possibilities. Over the following 2 weeks, Charles coordinated a series of more in-depth tests and analyses of the spring. Each result confirmed what they already suspected. It was one of the purest and most valuable mineral water sources in the region. "Harold, I need to give you some news you might not like very much," said the lawyer during a meeting. "What happened?" "The news about the spring has leaked. There are interested businessmen making offers to buy the land." "Offers? What kind of offers?" Charles showed a folder with documents. "The lowest offer is 2 million reais. The highest is 8 million. Harold felt his legs go weak. He had never imagined he could see so much money in his life. 8 million? Is that really true?" "It's true. But before you get too excited, you need to know who's making the highest offer." The lawyer opened one of the folders and showed the name on the proposal. Harrington Construction Company. Vincent Harrington discovered the land's value and wants to buy it back. Harold fell silent for a long time, processing the irony of the situation. The man who had given him that land as a form of humiliation was now offering a fortune to get it back. "Does he know it was me who found the water?" He knows, and from what I've been told, he's desperate. His construction company is going through financial difficulties, and this spring would be the salvation of his business. And what do you recommend? I recommend you think calmly. 8 million is a lot of money. More than you and your wife will need for the rest of your lives. Harold went home with his head spinning with possibilities. He told everything to Dorothy, who was as shocked as he was. 8 million, Harold. We never even dreamed of that much money. It really is a lot of money, but there's something bothering me. What? If we sell now, it's as if we're agreeing that Harrington was right, that we're small and should accept the crumbs he offers. Dorothy understood perfectly what her husband was feeling. It wasn't just about money, it was about dignity and justice. What do you want to do, Harold? I want to refuse the offer. I want to build something on that land that proves we don't need his handouts. But what if we get much less money by exploiting the water ourselves? Then at least it will be our money earned by our work, not a handout to silence us. That night, the couple talked late into the night about the future. By morning, they had made a decision. Charles didn't seem surprised when they communicated their refusal. I imagined you would choose this path, and I already have an alternative plan prepared. What kind of plan? Instead of selling the spring, you can start a mineral water company. With the reports we have, getting licenses is relatively simple, and with modest production, you can have a very good income for the rest of your lives. The proposal was tempting, but Harold had some concerns. Mister, I don't understand anything about business. I've never even been a section chief. That's why you won't run it alone. We'll form a partnership with competent people who will handle the technical and administrative parts. You remain the owner of the spring, but you have partners who know how to turn this into a business. And who would these partners be? I have some contacts with honest people who work in the industry, small business owners who know how to operate without stepping on anyone. The conversation went on for 2 hours, and in the end, Harold was convinced that this was the best option. He would have control over his destiny without losing the land that had cost him so much work to clear. How long does it take to set all this up? If all goes well, in 6 months you could be selling your first batch of water. It seemed like a dream too distant to be real, but Harold decided to trust the lawyer and the new direction his life was taking. The following weeks were very busy on the property. Besides the team of retirees who continued the work of clearing and construction, there were now also technicians conducting studies for the future mineral water company. One of the new partners was Rebecca Anderson, an environmental engineer around 40 years old, who had worked for several companies in the beverage sector. Mr. Harold, based on the quality and volume of your spring, you can produce up to 50,000 litres per month without compromising the aquifer, she explained during a visit to the site. And is that a lot or a little? For a small company, it's excellent production. It can generate a net revenue of approximately 30,000 Rs monthly for the partners. Dorothy almost fainted upon hearing the number. 30,000 Rs a month was more than Harold earned in an entire year as a bricklayer. Are you sure about that figure, ma'am? I am. Quality mineral water has a guaranteed market, especially with the certifications you will obtain. The enthusiasm was contagious, but Harold kept his feet on the ground. He knew there was still a lot of work ahead before any dream could become reality. And how much do we need to invest to set up production? The initial investment is around 200,000 Rs for basic equipment. It seems like a lot, but with the quality of your water, the return comes quickly. 200,000 Rs, but we don't have that kind of money. That's why we'll look for investors or financing. With the spring as collateral, any bank will lend that amount. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of an unexpected visitor. Vincent Harrington had appeared personally on the property, driving his luxury car and wearing a suit even more flashy than usual. Harold, what a coincidence to find you here. The false tone of cordiality fooled no one. Harrington was clearly uncomfortable and nervous. Mr. Vincent, how can I help you? I came to talk business, Harold. I heard you refused my offer to buy the land. That's true. I decided to keep it. Harrington looked around, noticing all the work that had been done and the movement of technicians and equipment. I see you're taking this seriously. Very good, very good. But I must warn you about the risks of starting a company. It's a complicated world, full of bureaucracy and problems. I appreciate the concern, but I already have advisors for those matters." "Advisors?" Harrington looked at Rebecca and Charles with poorly disguised contempt. "Harold, you can't trust just anyone. Unscrupulous people might take advantage of your inexperience." "Like you took advantage of it for 36 years?" The question caught Harrington completely off guard. For the first time, Harold had directly confronted how he had been treated all those years. "Harold, I think you are poorly advised. I'm here to offer you one last chance. 10 million for the land. It's my final offer. And I thank you, but my answer is no." Harrington's face turned red with anger. He wasn't used to being rejected, especially by someone he had always considered inferior. "You are making the biggest mistake of your life, Harold. This land will bring you more trouble than you can imagine." "What kind of problems?" "Environmental problems, legal problems, problems with inspections. It's much more complicated than you think." Charles intervened in the conversation. "Mr. Harrington, all legal and environmental matters are being handled properly. Mr. Harold is in compliance with all requirements." "And who are you to speak for Harold?" "I'm his lawyer, Charles Bennett." Harrington recognized the name immediately. Charles had won several labor lawsuits against the construction company in recent years. "Ah, the famous Charles. I should have guessed you'd be involved in this. I am representing the legitimate interests of my client, nothing more." The tension in the air was palpable. Harrington realized he wouldn't be able to intimidate or persuade Harold with that team by his side. "Very well, Harold. You've made your choice. I hope you don't regret it." He returned to his car and sped off, raising a cloud of dust that covered everyone present. "That man is dangerous," said Rebecca. "You all need to be alert to any attempt at sabotage." "Sabotage? What kind of sabotage?" "Anonymous reports to the regulatory agencies, attempts to contaminate the spring, pressure on suppliers and customers. Unscrupulous businessmen use various methods when they don't get what they want." Harold felt a weight in his chest. He hadn't imagined that his simple dream of building something on the land could generate so much conflict. "Dr. Charles, are we doing the right thing?" "You are, Harold. You have every right to develop your property. What we can't do is allow intimidation to work." During the following days, the team intensified their work to speed up the company's licensing process. The faster they got the permits, the less vulnerable they would be to outside interference. Rebecca brought an engineer specialized in water catchment systems who made a complete plan for the sustainable exploitation of the spring. The plan included a controlled catchment that would preserve the aquifer for decades. "With this system, you can operate safely for at least 50 years with no risk of depleting the spring," explained the technician. 50 years? That's longer than I have left to live," joked Harold. "That's precisely why the project is so important. You're creating something that can benefit your children and grandchildren." The mention of future generations brought a new perspective to Harold. He had never thought of the land as an inheritance to leave for his family, but now he saw he was building a legacy. The first good news came 3 weeks later. All environmental permits were approved without reservations. The second good news came the same day. A bank had approved the financing for the equipment purchase. "Harold, officially you are in the mineral water business," announced Charles with a broad smile. "Does that mean production will start now?" "It means we can order the equipment. Production should start in 2 months." The news spread quickly among the friends who had helped clean the land. Dennis, Frank, Walter, and Raymond came to celebrate with beer and an improvised barbecue. "Harold, you've achieved what few do in life," said Dennis. "You turned a humiliation into a victory. The victory hasn't come yet. For now, it's just hope." "Nonsense, man. Look around. This land was unusable 4 months ago. Today it has a house starting to be built, a protected spring, and a company about to operate. If that's not victory, I don't know what is." Indeed, the transformation of the place was impressive. The cleared area revealed land with a privileged view of the mountains, fertile soil in the parts without rock, and a perfect topography for construction. "And another thing," Walter continued, "the house we're building is turning out better than any house I ever built at the construction company." It was true. With all the time available and without the pressure of tight deadlines, the team of retirees had taken great care with every detail. The natural stone walls were a work of art, and the architecture followed the traditional style of the region. "When the house is finished, you'll have the most beautiful property in the area," said Raymond. Dorothy watched the conversation with tears in her eyes. She had never imagined that she and her husband could own a house, let alone a large, beautiful house like the one being built. "Harold, do you remember when we got married and dreamed of having a little house with a yard?" "I do. 40 years ago at the little St. Harold Church. Who would have thought our yard would be 2,000 square meters?" The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a truck. It was the delivery of the first equipment for the future mineral water plant, storage tanks, a filtration system, and basic bottling machines. "Everyone, now things are getting serious," said Rebecca, supervising the unloading of the equipment. "In 15 days, you'll be producing water commercially." The real prospect of starting to make money from the spring left Harold both anxious and excited. It was as if his entire previous life had been preparation for that moment. "Rebecca, do you really think it will work?" "I'm sure. With the quality of your water and the market we've already mapped out, success is guaranteed." "What market?" "Gourmet restaurants, spas, high-end gyms, and places where people value quality and are willing to pay for it." The concept of selling water to rich people was strange to Harold, but he trusted his partner's technical knowledge. During the installation of the equipment, an unexpected visitor appeared, a journalist from the local newspaper who had heard about the story of the land and wanted to do a piece. "Mr. Harold, is it true that you turned a useless piece of land into a prosperous business?" "We're still at the beginning, son. I don't know if I can call it prosperous, but I was told you refused offers of millions to sell the land." Harold was uncomfortable with the question. He didn't want the story to become a media circus. "Look, son, I just wanted to make a house for my wife and me. The rest was a consequence." The journalist insisted on taking some photos and managed to convince Harold to tell the story from the beginning. The article was published 3 days later with the headline, "Retiree Turns Gift of Humiliation into $1 million Business." "Harold, you've become a celebrity," joked Dennis, showing the newspaper. "What celebrity? I just hope this story doesn't bring trouble." Harold's concern proved justified. The article attracted the attention of several people, including some with bad intentions. 2 days after publication, 3 men who identified themselves as environmental inspectors showed up at the property. They claimed there had been reports of irregular exploitation of water resources and wanted to conduct an inspection. "Do you have authorization for this?" asked Charles, who happened to be present. "Yes, we do. Here's the warrant." The lawyer examined the documents and confirmed they were in order, although it was strange to have such a detailed inspection right after all the permits had been approved. The inspection lasted the entire day. The inspectors measured the spring's flow rate, collected water samples, checked all the equipment, and questioned every detail of the project. "Everything is in compliance," said one of the inspectors at the end of the inspection. "But we'll take the samples for further analysis. If there is any irregularity, the operation will be suspended." After they left, Charles expressed his suspicions. "That inspection was very convenient. I bet someone made an anonymous complaint. Who would do that?" "Someone who doesn't want to see you prospering." The tension of the following days was almost unbearable. Harold and Dorothy barely slept, worried that all the work could be lost due to some technical irregularity. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. The test results came a week later, and it was a relief. The water met all required quality standards, and there were no irregularities in the operation. "You passed the trial by fire," said Rebecca. "Now you can produce in peace." The first commercial production happened on a Tuesday morning. Harold watched, moved, as the first bottles of St. Harold mineral water came off the handmade assembly line. "Dorothy, come see this. Our water is being bottled." She approached and picked up one of the first bottles with trembling hands. "It says St. Harold mineral water, pure by nature. How beautiful, Harold." It was Rebecca's idea to use the saint from my name. And it was a great idea. St. Harold has always been our protector. The first shipment of 1,000 bottles was delivered to 5 establishments in town, 2 restaurants, a spa, a gym, and a natural products store. The nerves were high, as this would be the first real test of the product's acceptance. The feedback was better than anyone had imagined. Within 3 days, all the establishments placed new orders, some doubling the initial quantity. "Harold, you have a winning product," said the owner of the town's most sophisticated restaurant. "My customers are asking where they can buy it to take home." "Really? People actually liked it?" "They liked it so much that I want to make an exclusivity deal. I'll take your entire production if you can increase it to 5,000 bottles a month." The offer was tempting, but Rebecca advised caution. It's better to diversify clients at the beginning. Dependence on a single buyer can be dangerous. Within 2 months, demand grew so much that they needed to increase production. They hired 2 local employees to help with bottling and distribution, turning the company into a source of jobs for the community. "Harold, we need to talk about expansion," said Rebecca during a monthly business review meeting. "What kind of expansion?" "Demand is growing faster than our production capacity. Either we increase investment in equipment or we'll lose clients to competitors. How much would it cost to increase production?" "To double capacity, we'd need another $300,000. The amount frightened Harold, but the company's numbers justified the investment. In just 4 months of operation, they had already recouped the initial investment and accumulated a considerable reserve. "And if we don't expand? Then you stay stagnant with a fixed monthly income, which isn't bad, but it wastes the spring's potential." Charles suggested a meeting with the bank manager to evaluate financing options for the expansion. The meeting was a success. With the proven results, the bank approved a loan on even better terms than the first one. "Mr. Harold, it's a pleasure doing business with honest and competent people like you," said the manager. "Your company is already a benchmark in the regional market." The news of the expansion spread quickly, and it brought unexpected consequences. Harrington appeared at the property again, but this time with a completely different attitude. "Harold, I came here to make a partnership proposal." "Partnership? I know you're growing fast and might need logistical support." "My company has trucks, warehouses, a distribution network. We can work together." The change in tone was stark. The man who months earlier had mocked and humiliated now spoke as if they were potential partners. "Mr. Vincent Harrington, I appreciate the offer, but we already have our structure in place." "Harold, you don't understand. The mineral water market is competitive and cruel. You're going to need someone experienced to navigate that world. We've managed so far." "So far, you're in the local market. When you try to expand to other regions, you'll face big companies with a lot of economic power. Alone, you don't stand a chance." Rebecca intervened in the conversation. "Mr. Harrington, we appreciate your concern, but our growth strategy is well defined and does not include partnerships at the moment." Harrington looked at Rebecca with poorly disguised contempt. "And who is this lady to speak for Harold's business?" "I am a partner in the company and responsible for the technical and commercial areas." "A partner? Harold, you divided your company with strangers." "Mr. Vincent Harrington, Rebecca is not a stranger. She is a competent professional who has helped me from the beginning." "Harold, you're being naive. These people are going to suck dry everything you've built and then abandon you." The accusation left Harold irritated. For months, Rebecca had worked tirelessly to turn the Spring into a prosperous business, often sacrificing other commitments. "Mr. Vincent Harrington, I think it's best you leave. I don't need your advice." "You'll regret this, Harold. When this company collapses, remember that I offered help." Harrington left, visibly displeased, but the conversation left Harold pensive. Was it possible that Rebecca and Charles had ulterior motives? "Dorothy, do you think I might be being deceived?" "Deceived by whom?" "By Rebecca, by Charles. Harrington said they might be taking advantage of me." Dorothy looked at her husband with an expression between surprise and disappointment. "Harold Mitchell, I can't believe you're doubting the only people who have truly helped us." "I'm not doubting. I'm just thinking if I'm not being too naive." "You want to know who's being naive?" "It's you, listening to the man who humiliated you, and now wants to take advantage of your success." Dorothy's answer was like a slap in Harold's face. She was right. He was allowing Harrington's poisonous words to plant doubts about people who had proven their loyalty through concrete actions. "You're right, woman. I don't know what came over me." "What came over you was fear. Fear that things are too good to be true. But sometimes life surprises us positively, Harold." That night, he reflected on how his mindset had changed over the months. The resigned man who accepted humiliations without fighting back had given way to a cautious and determined businessman. The company's expansion proceeded without major problems. The new equipment increased production capacity to 10,000 bottles monthly, and demand continued to grow steadily. An important milestone was reached in the 6th month of operation. St. Harold Mineral Water began to be sold in a regional supermarket chain, significantly increasing the company's revenue. "Harold, the time has come for you to hire an accountant and formalize the company structure better," suggested Charles. "Why? The accounts aren't that complicated." "Not for now, but with the growth you're having, you'll soon need more sophisticated controls. And there are also tax matters that need to be well taken care of." The suggestion made sense. The company had grown from an artisanal operation to a business moving tens of thousands of dollars monthly. The accountant recommended by Charles was a woman around 50 years old named Margaret Parker, specialized in small and medium-sized family businesses. "Mr. Harold, from the numbers I've seen, you have a very solid company. The growth is happening sustainably, and the profitability is excellent." "Is that good?" "It's very good. Many companies grow too fast and end up going under due to lack of control. You're doing everything right." Margaret suggested some changes to the corporate structure to optimize taxes and better protect the family's assets, all within the law, but taking advantage of tax benefits available for small businesses. With these changes, you'll save about 20% on taxes, which represents savings of several $1,000s a year. The savings suggested by the accountant would be enough to pay for an additional employee or invest in more equipment. Harold was impressed with the complexity of the business world he was discovering. During this period of growth, the house on the property had also been completed. It was a robust and beautiful construction, with natural stone walls, a traditional ceramic tile roof, and a carefully planned garden around the protected spring. "Harold, our house turned out like a palace," said Dorothy on moving day. It was true, with 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a spacious kitchen, and a porch with a view of the mountains. The house was far better than any residence they had ever imagined they could have. "And to think it all started with that pile of rocks," reflected Harold, looking at the transformed property. Where before there were only rocks and brush, now there was an organized property with a house, factory, gardens, and even a small vegetable patch that Dorothy had insisted on making. The official inauguration of the new house was celebrated with a party for everyone who had helped transform the property. Dennis, Frank, Walter, Raymond, Rebecca, Charles, Margaret, and dozens of other people who had in some way contributed to that success. "Everyone, I'd like to make a toast," said Harold, raising a glass of mineral water from his own company. "A year ago I thought my life was over. Today I know it was actually just beginning." The applause was warm and sincere. Everyone there knew they were celebrating much more than a new house or a prosperous company. They were celebrating the victory of dignity over humiliation, of honest work over opportunism. "And I want to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you," Harold continued. "Without your help, none of this would have been possible." "Harold, you're the one who deserves the congratulations," said Dennis. "Most people in your situation would have sold the land and kept the money. You had the courage to build something." "And thank goodness you did," added Rebecca, "because now you have much more than you would have if you had sold. You have a company that can support the family for generations." The party lasted late into the night. When everyone had left, Harold and Dorothy stayed on the porch, looking at the stars and reflecting on the extraordinary journey they had lived. "Do you regret anything, Harold?" "Nothing, Dorothy. Not even the humiliation from Harrington. If it weren't for that, we would never have discovered what we were capable of doing." "And what do you think lies ahead?" "I think the best is yet to come. The company is growing, we have our health, We have true friends. What more could we want? The answer came 3 weeks later, in a completely unexpected way. Harold received a call from a man who introduced himself as a representative of a large hotel and resort chain. "Mr. Harold, our company is interested in making an exclusive supply contract for your mineral water for our establishments in 3 states. How many bottles are we talking about?" "Initially, 50,000 bottles monthly, with the possibility of increasing to 100,000 in 6 months. The number left Harold dizzy. 50,000 bottles was 5 times more than they currently produced. "And what would be the term of this contract?" 5 years, renewable, with values adjusted annually according to the inflation index. Harold asked for time to evaluate the proposal with his partners. The meeting to discuss the matter happened the following evening, with Rebecca, Charles, and Margaret present. "Guys, this proposal could be the opportunity of a lifetime," said Rebecca, "but it also represents an enormous challenge." "What kind of challenge?" "To meet 50,000 bottles monthly, we would need to completely automate production. That means an investment of at least 1 million reais. The amount was frightening, but Margaret had already done some preliminary calculations. With the revenue guaranteed for 5 years, the return on investment would come in less than 2 years, and after that it would be pure profit for 3 years. "And if we can't fulfill the contract? Then they could demand heavy fines and cancel the agreement," warned Charles. The decision wasn't easy. Accepting meant betting the entire future of the company on a single move. Refusing meant continuing to grow slowly, without big risks, but also without big rewards. "Harold, the decision is yours," said Rebecca. "You can continue as you are and have a comfortable life, or you can take a risk and have a chance to become truly rich. What would you do in my place?" "I would take the risk," said Rebecca. "Your spring has the capacity to sustain this production for decades, and opportunities like this don't come along every day." "I would also take the risk," agreed Charles. "With well-drafted contracts, the risks are controllable." Margaret was more cautious. "I would do it, but with some demands. Advance payment for a portion of the contract to secure the investment, and protective clauses in case you can't meet deadlines for reasons beyond your control." The suggestions made sense. Harold said he needed to talk to Dorothy before making a final decision. "Dorothy, what do you think? Do we risk everything on a single card?" "Harold, you've already shown you're not afraid of hard work, and if it goes wrong, we still have the house and the spring. No one can take that from us. So you think we should accept?" "I think we should try. We've been through worse and survived." The decision was made. The next day, Harold called the hotel chain representative and communicated that he accepted the proposal, but with some conditions that Charles had suggested. "Perfect, Mr. Harold. We'll prepare the contracts with those clauses. You can begin preparations for the expansion." The following weeks were of frantic work. Rebecca coordinated the purchase and installation of industrial equipment that completely transformed the company's structure. What was once an artisanal operation became a small, modern industry. They needed to hire 8 local employees and conduct intensive training in quality and food safety. Harold found himself in the unprecedented position of boss, leading a team of people who depended on him for their family's livelihood. "Everyone, I want to make one thing very clear," he said during the first meeting with all the employees. "Here, everyone will be treated with respect and dignity. Whoever works properly will be valued." The speech was met with smiles and applause. Several of the employees had worked at other companies in the region and knew that not all bosses thought that way. During the assembly of the new production line, a visitor appeared who was no longer a surprise: Vincent Harrington. But this time he wasn't alone. He had brought a lawyer and 2 men in suits who appeared to be executives from some company. "Harold, I need to speak with you urgently." "Mr. Harrington, I'm busy setting up the equipment. If this is another buyout offer, I'll tell you right now I'm not interested." "It's not a buyout offer, Harold. It's a friendly warning." "What kind of warning?" "These gentlemen here represent Waters of America, one of the largest companies in the sector in the country. They have an interest in this region and want to avoid unnecessary conflicts." One of the executives stepped forward. "Mr. Harold, our company is planning an expansion into this region. It would be interesting for everyone if we could reach a friendly agreement before business gets complicated." What kind of agreement? We buy your operation for a fair price, and you avoid the problems that will arise when we start operating here. What problems? Unfair competition, price wars, difficulties with suppliers and distributors. The regional market doesn't have room for two large mineral water companies. The threat was clear, even disguised as a business proposal. Charles, who was present, intervened immediately. Gentlemen, this conversation sounds more like an attempt at intimidation than a legitimate business proposal. Lawyer, there's no intimidation. We're just explaining market reality. The reality is that my client has signed contracts, valid licenses, and is operating within the law. I see no reason for changes. Harrington lost his patience. Harold, you're being stubborn. These people have the power to destroy everything you've built. Accept the offer while there's still time. And why are you so interested in this, Mr. Harrington? Because I'm interested in seeing you do well, Harold. The answer was obviously false. Rebecca, who had arrived in the middle of the conversation, asked a direct question. Mr. Harrington, do you have some kind of partnership with this company? The awkward silence was answer enough. Harrington had teamed up with competitors to try to force the sale of Harold's company. I think you'd better leave, said Harold firmly. I have no interest in negotiating under pressure. You'll regret this decision, Harold, said the Waters of America executive. We'll start our operation here with or without your agreement. After they left, Harold's team was silent for a few minutes, processing the threat they had just received. Can they really cause trouble? Asked Dorothy. They can try, replied Charles, but we have signed contracts and established rights. It's not easy to remove an established company from the market using just commercial pressure. What if they lower prices drastically? Our edge is quality, not price. The clients who value our water won't switch just to save money. Rebecca was more worried about other possibilities. They might try to sabotage our operation in more subtle ways. Problems with suppliers, difficulties with regulatory agencies, smear campaigns. So what do? We document everything, strengthen our contracts, and prepare for a commercial battle. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a truck with the last piece of production line equipment, an automatic labeling machine that would allow them to reach a production of 50,000 bottles per month. Everyone, regardless of the threats, we have a factory to open, said Harold. Let's focus on what's important. The test of the new production line was a complete success. In 8 hours of operation, they managed to produce more bottles than they did in an entire week with the old system. Harold, you now have a real company, said Margaret, impressed with the operation's efficiency. This production line leaves nothing to be desired compared to much larger companies. The official inauguration of the expanded factory was scheduled for the following week, with the presence of local authorities and representatives from key clients. It would be a way to publicly show that the company was growing and consolidating its position in the market. 2 days before the inauguration, worrying news arrived. Health surveillance inspectors had appeared for a routine inspection, but found irregularities that would require a new inspection before operations could be cleared. What kind of irregularities? Asked Rebecca. Issues with the filtration system and questions about the quality of the stored water, replied the inspector. But all of that was approved in previous inspections. There have been changes in the evaluation criteria. You need to comply with the new standards. Charles became suspicious of the timing of the inspection. May I see the technical report that supports these requirements? The report will be sent in a few days. For now, operations are suspended pending a new inspection. The suspension was a terrible blow. With the inauguration scheduled and contracts to fulfill, any delay could seriously compromise the company's credibility. This is sabotage, said Rebecca after the inspectors left. Someone made false reports to create difficulties. How do we prove that? We'll hire an independent laboratory to conduct complete analyses of everything. If there are no real technical problems, we can challenge the decision. The hired laboratory worked for 2 days conducting exhaustive analyses of water, equipment, and procedures. The results confirmed their suspicions. There were no technical irregularities to justify the suspension. With these reports, we can file a lawsuit to suspend the inspector's decision, said Charles. How long will that take? With an injunction, it could be resolved in a week. A week was too long. The inauguration would have to be cancelled and the supply contracts would be at risk. That's when unexpected support appeared. The town's mayor, who had been invited to the inauguration, called Harold personally. "Mr. Harold, I heard about the problems with the inspection. I want you to know that our City Hall supports your company and will do everything within our power to resolve this situation. Thank you, Mayor, but I'm not sure there's much that can be done." "There is. I will request a new inspection with inspectors from another agency. If there are no real problems, the clearance will be issued immediately." The political intervention worked. In 2 days, a new team of inspectors conducted a complete inspection and approved all facilities without reservations. "Mr. Harold, your company is operating within the highest quality standards," said the lead inspector. "You may resume production immediately." The inauguration was rescheduled for the following week and took place without further problems. Over 200 people attended, including authorities, clients, suppliers, and local residents. "Friends, 1 year ago I received this land as a humiliation," said Harold during the opening speech. "Today it has been transformed into a company that generates jobs and development for our community." The applause was long and warm. Many people in the audience knew the story from the beginning and understood how much work had been necessary to get there. "And I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone who believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself. Without you, none of this would be possible." During the inauguration party, Harold noticed a man observing the celebration from afar. It was Vincent Harrington, alone in his car, with an expression of defeat on his face. For a moment, Harold felt pity for his former boss. The man who once seemed so powerful was now isolated and visibly diminished by his own failure to destroy what he could not control. "Mr. Vincent," Harold approached the car. "Aren't you coming in for the party?" Harrington looked at him with surprise, clearly not expecting to be invited. "Harold, I don't think it's appropriate." "Why not? Everyone is welcome here. After everything I've done, you're still inviting me?" "Mr. Vincent Harrington, I've learned that holding a grudge only hurts the one who holds it. If you want to come in, just come on in." Harrington fell silent for a long moment, as if wrestling with himself. "Thank you for the invitation, Harold, but I think it's better if I leave." "That's fine, but know that the door is always open." The car drove away slowly, and Harold returned to the party with a strange feeling of inner peace. He had completed a cycle of personal growth that had begun with humiliation and ended with forgiveness. "Harold, who are you talking to?" asked Dorothy. "With Harrington. I invited him to come in." "You did the right thing. After all, he's the one who brought us here." The party lasted until late, and when everyone had left, Harold and Dorothy stayed on the house's porch, watching the illuminated factory with the production line working the night shift. "Dorothy, can you believe everything that's happened? Sometimes I pinch myself to see if I'm not dreaming. And to think it all started with a bunch of rocks nobody wanted. The rocks were just the beginning, Harold. What changed everything was your determination not to give up." They stayed silent for a few minutes, listening to the gentle sound of the machines running and watching the stars in the region's clear sky. "What do you think lies ahead?" asked Dorothy. "I don't know, my dear, but one thing I've learned. Sometimes fate gives us stones so we can build castles." The answer proved prophetic. In the following weeks, the company continued to grow beyond all expectations. The contract with the hotel chain was fulfilled without a hitch, and new clients appeared regularly. 6 months after the inauguration of the expanded factory, they received an even more ambitious proposal. A major distributor wanted to take St. Harold mineral water to other states with a sales potential of 200,000 bottles monthly. "Harold, if we accept this proposal, we'll stop being a regional company and become a national brand," explained Rebecca. "And is that good or bad?" "It's good for growth and for profits. But it also means more responsibilities, more employees, more investments." "How many employees are we talking about?" "For that production, at least 50 people working in 2 shifts. The number impressed Harold. 50 families depending on the company that was born from a rejected piece of land. "Rebecca, do you think the spring can handle all that production?" "It can handle it easily. We did new studies, and the aquifer can sustain up to 500,000 bottles monthly without compromising the water's natural renewal. The decision again wasn't easy, but this time Harold was more confident in his ability to assess risks and opportunities. Let's accept, but with one condition. Every new employee has to be from the region. I want the company's growth to benefit our community. Done. And that even helps because local labor costs less and has less turnover. The expansion into the national market brought completely new challenges. Harold had to learn about logistics, marketing, state regulations, and a series of technical issues he had never imagined. Sometimes I feel lost in the middle of so much information, he confessed to Dorothy during a dinner. That's normal, Harold. You're learning things that business people study for years to master. Do you think I'm handling it? I'm seeing the results. The company doesn't stop growing, the employees are satisfied, the clients are happy. If that's not handling it, I don't know what is. An important symbolic milestone was reached a year and a half after operations began. The company hit the mark of 1 million bottles sold, officially becoming one of the largest regional producers of mineral water. Team, 1 million bottles, said Harold during the celebration with the employees. 2 years ago, I couldn't even imagine a number like this. The party took place on the property itself, with barbecue, music, and lots of joy. Employees brought their families, suppliers came to show their support, and even competitors showed up to congratulate the success. During the celebration, a special guest arrived that no one expected, Vincent Harrington, but this time with a completely different demeanor. Harold, I came here to do something I should have done a long time ago. What is it, Mr. Vincent Harrington? I came to apologize for what I did to you, for the humiliation, for the attempt at sabotage. I was wrong about everything. The apology took everyone by surprise. Harrington seemed genuinely remorseful and embarrassed. Mr. Vincent Harrington, that's all in the past. It's not in the past, Harold. You deserved respect and recognition, and I only gave you contempt. I am a lesser man for it. Harold looked around and saw dozens of people watching the conversation. It was a moment that would define not only his character, but also the kind of leader he had become. Mr. Vincent Harrington, we all make mistakes. The important thing is to acknowledge them and try to be better. You are doing that now. Thank you for being generous with me, Harold. I don't deserve it. Everyone deserves a second chance, Doctor, including you. The handshake between the two men was applauded by all present. It was the symbolic end of a cycle of conflict and the beginning of a new phase based on forgiveness and reconciliation. And now, Mr. Vincent Harrington, how about trying our mineral water? I guarantee it's top quality. Harrington smiled for the first time in the entire conversation. It would be an honor, Harold. The party lasted until the late hours, and when everyone had left, Harold found himself reflecting on the extraordinary transformation his life had undergone. From the humiliated employee who received a useless plot of land had emerged a respected businessman who generated jobs for 50 families and produced a product recognized in several states. Dorothy, do you remember when we lived in that small apartment and dreamed of having a little house with a yard? I do, and look where we've gotten. Sometimes I'm afraid I'll wake up and find out all this was a dream. It wasn't a dream, Harold. It was hard work, it was persistence, it was having the right people by our side. And it was also discovering that sometimes fate gives us exactly what we need, even when it seems the opposite. 2 years after the factory's inauguration, St. Harold Mineral Water had become one of the most respected brands in the segment in the country. The company employed over 100 people, served customers in 6 states, and had become the largest job creator in the region. Harold, now nearly 70 years old, had transformed into a respected figure in the business world. He received invitations to speak about entrepreneurship and overcoming adversity, participated in business associations, and was consulted by other small business owners seeking advice. Mr. Harold, what is the secret to your success? A young entrepreneur asked him during a lecture. There's no secret, son. There's hard work, there's honesty, there's persistence. And there's also the luck of finding good people who believe in us. But you never got discouraged? I got discouraged many times, but I always remembered that giving up would be proving right those who doubted me, and I couldn't allow that. The answer always drew applause from the audience, But for Harold, it wasn't just a catchy phrase. It was the genuine synthesis of his life philosophy. During one of these talks, he met other business owners who had overcome similar adversities. The idea then emerged to create a foundation to help retired workers who wanted to start their own businesses. Harold, with your story and your credibility, a foundation like this could transform the lives of thousands of people, suggested Rebecca. Do you think I have the ability to lead a project of this size? I'm certain, and you won't be alone. There are already several people interested in supporting the initiative. The St. Harold Foundation was created 6 months later, with the goal of offering microcredit, technical guidance, and psychological support for mature workers who wanted to become entrepreneurs. Our mission is to show that age is no barrier to starting over, Harold said during the foundation's launch. Sometimes life experience is worth more than university degrees. The first project supported by the foundation was from a former construction colleague who wanted to set up a woodworking shop. With a small loan and technical guidance, the man managed to establish a prosperous business within a few months. "Harold, you changed my life," said the carpenter during a visit. "Without your help, I'd still be unemployed and discouraged. I only offered the opportunity. The one who changed your life was you with your work." In 3 years of operation, the foundation had already supported over 200 small entrepreneurs with a success rate of nearly 80%. It was an impressive statistic for any microcredit program. "Harold, you've become a national reference in social entrepreneurship," said Charles during a foundation board meeting. "Not at all, son. I'm just giving back a little of what life gave me." It's exactly that humility that makes you special. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of unexpected news. St. Harold Mineral Water had been chosen as the best mineral water in the country by a specialized beverage magazine. "Harold, you've won the top prize in the category," announced Rebecca, holding the magazine. "It's the definitive recognition of the product's quality." The award brought an avalanche of new opportunities. International distributors made contact, interested in taking the brand to other countries. Major supermarket chains wanted to expand supply contracts. "Rebecca, do you think we should accept the international proposals?" "I think so, but carefully. Too rapid growth could compromise the quality that got us here." "Then let's grow slowly, without haste. The priority is maintaining the standard." The decision proved to be correct. The controlled expansion allowed the company to maintain its reputation for excellence while gradually increasing its market share. 5 years after receiving the rocky land, Harold found himself in the position of one of the most respected business owners in the region. His company was studied in universities as an example of successful entrepreneurship, and his personal story inspired thousands of people across the country. "Dorothy, when I was a boy, my mother used to say that God writes straight with crooked lines." And she was right. Who would have thought that humiliation would lead us here? The most amazing thing is that I don't feel anger toward Harrington. In fact, I'm almost grateful to him. Grateful? If he hadn't given me that land, I would never have discovered what I was capable of. I would have retired as a bricklayer and left it at that. The reflection was deep and revealing. Harold had understood that life's obstacles, however painful they were initially, often transformed into the greatest opportunities for growth. During a routine visit to the spring, he made a discovery that brought a new perspective on his journey. While digging near the original spring to perform maintenance, he found a metal plaque buried decades ago. "Rebecca, come see this." The plaque was corroded, but part of the inscription was still readable. "St. Harold Spring, property of the Thompson family, 1952. "Harold, this means someone knew about this spring a long time ago." They researched the City Hall archives and discovered that the land had belonged to the family of Mr. Edgar, the elderly neighbor who had welcomed them on the first day. "Mr. Edgar, did you know about the existence of this spring?" "Yes, I did, son. My father discovered it in the 1950s, but he was never able to properly exploit it. At the time, there was no technology or market for mineral water." "Why did you never tell me?" "Because I wanted to see if you had the courage to discover it on your own. And you did. That shows it was destiny." The revelation added an almost mystical dimension to the story. Harold had been instinctively guided to the exact location where previous generations had dreamed of building something great. "Mr. Edgar, don't you want to become a partner in the company? After all, it was your family that discovered the spring." "Oh no, son. I had my chance and didn't know how to take advantage of it. Now it's your turn. I'm just happy to see that someone finally managed to give value to this blessing of nature." The neighbor's generosity deeply moved Harold. Even so, he insisted on giving a symbolic share of the company's profits to the Thompson family as a way of acknowledging the spring's historical heritage. 8 years after receiving the land, Harold was invited to give a lecture at a university in New York about his entrepreneurial journey. It was an important academic recognition for someone who had never been more than a construction worker. "Students, the story I'm going to tell you proves that opportunity can arise in the most unexpected places," he began his presentation. The audience of future managers listened attentively as he recounted each stage of his journey, from the initial humiliation to the construction of a business empire based on mineral water. "The most important lesson I learned is that the value of things is not in their initial appearance, but in the potential we know how to see and develop." "Professor Harold," a student asked, "did you ever imagine you would get to where you are?" "Never, my dear. My dreams were much simpler. But life has an interesting way of presenting us with challenges greater than we imagine we can face." "And what advice would you give to young entrepreneurs?" "First, never give up just because someone doubted you. Second, always have honest and competent people by your side. Third, remember that success only has value if it benefits other people too." The lecture was an absolute success, and Harold received invitations to speak at other universities. His story had become study material in entrepreneurship courses across the country. On the way back home, he reflected on how strange it was to be called Professor Harold by college students when he himself had only studied up to the 4th grade. "Dorothy, can you imagine? Me teaching future managers. Why not? You have more practical experience than many university professors." "That's true. But sometimes I still feel like that insecure bricklayer who left the construction company almost 10 years ago. The difference is that now you know what you're capable of." 10 years after receiving the Rocky land, Harold celebrated an extraordinary milestone. His company had sold 10 million bottles of mineral water, employed 200 people directly and another 300 indirectly, and had become the main industry in the region. The celebration party took place in the same location where it had all begun, but now transformed into a modern industrial complex surrounded by gardens and leisure areas for the employees. "Everyone, 10 million bottles sold," said Harold during his speech to the staff. "That represents 10 million opportunities this company has brought to our families and our community." Among the party guests was Vincent Harrington, now a completely different man from the arrogant businessman of a decade ago. His company had gone bankrupt years before, and he now worked as a consultant, helping small businesses grow. "Harold, I want to take this special occasion to make a public announcement," said Harrington when invited to speak. "What announcement, Mr. Vincent?" "I want to publicly apologize in front of everyone for what I did to you 10 years ago, and I also want to thank you for teaching me that true greatness lies in building, not in destroying." The public apology moved everyone present. It was a moment of redemption not only for Harrington, but for all who had witnessed the full cycle of the story. "Mr. Vincent, as I've said before, everyone deserves second chances. You are a better person today, and that's what matters." "Harold, may I make a confession?" "Of course. Giving you that land was the best thing I ever did in my life, even though I didn't know it at the time." "How so?" "Because it taught me that humiliating others is humiliating yourself, and because it allowed something beautiful to arise where I only saw useless rocks." The conversation between the two former adversaries, now reconciled by wisdom and time, was one of the most touching moments of the party. When everyone had left, Harold and Dorothy were alone on the porch of their house, looking at the industrial empire that had been born from a rejected piece of land. "Dorothy, if someone had told me this story 10 years ago, I'd say it was a lie. And if someone told me I'd be the wife of a famous businessman, I'd laugh in their face. Do you regret anything about this journey? Nothing, Harold. Not even the bad moments, because they are what brought us here. And what do you hope for the next 10 years? I hope we keep growing, but without ever forgetting where we came from and how many people believed in us. Dorothy's answer perfectly summarized the philosophy that had guided Harold throughout the transformation: to always grow, but with humility and gratitude. 15 years after receiving the land, Harold decided it was time to think about the company's succession. His hair was completely white, and although he still had the energy to work, he wanted to ensure that everything he had built would continue. Rebecca, would you consider taking on the presidency of the company? Harold, it would be an honor, but only if you remain as chairman of the board. Your experience and wisdom are irreplaceable. Deal, and I also want us to prepare some of the longest-serving employees for management positions. This company grew with them, and they deserve growth opportunities too. The succession plan was implemented gradually over 2 years. Harold transferred operational responsibilities while maintaining the role of mentor and strategic advisor. During this process, he also founded a free technical school in the region, focused on training young people in areas related to the food industry and business management. Harold, why a school? A journalist asked him during the inauguration. Because education is the only thing no one can take away from people, and because I want the young people of this region to have opportunities I never had. The school was an immediate success, with a waiting list for spots and partnerships with local companies, for internships and jobs for graduates. At 75, Harold could look back and see a journey that surpassed his most ambitious dreams. From a humiliated employee, he had become a respected businessman, philanthropist, and educator. His story inspired thousands of people across the country. But what made him most proud wasn't the awards or recognition, but rather the letters he regularly received from people who had changed their lives after hearing his story. "Mr. Harold," one letter said, "I am retired and was depressed, thinking my life was over. After hearing your talk, I decided to open a small bakery. Today, I employ 6 people, and I am happy again." Letters like this arrived every week, proving that the impact of his journey went far beyond personal business success. During an interview for a documentary about his life, Harold was asked what he considered his greatest legacy. "My greatest legacy is not the company, nor the money, nor the awards. It is having proven that no matter a person's age, formal education, or social background, if they have determination and the right people by their side, they can build extraordinary things." "And what message would you leave for future generations?" "I would leave this. Sometimes life gives us stones, so we learn to build. The important thing is not to complain about the stones, but to discover what castles we can build with them." The interview became a viral video on the internet, seen by millions of people and generating thousands of inspiring comments from those who felt motivated by the story. At 80, Harold still went to the company every day, not to work operationally anymore, but to talk with employees, learn about new projects, and maintain the family spirit that had always characterized the organization. During one of these visits, he was surprised by a special tribute. The employees had organized a photographic exhibition telling the entire history of the company, from the Stony Land to the current industrial complex. "Mr. Harold," said Linda, one of the longest-serving employees, "this exhibition is our way of thanking you for creating not just jobs, but a family. Many of us would never have had the opportunity to grow professionally without this company. Linda, you all built all this. I just gave the first push. But without that push, nothing would have started." The exhibition traveled to several cities, bringing the story of overcoming to thousands of people who had never heard of the bricklayer who turned stones into gold. In his last public interview at 82, Harold was asked if he would change anything in his journey if he could go back in time. "I wouldn't change a thing, not even the initial humiliation, because it was that which gave me the strength I needed to discover who I really was." "Do you still visit the place where it all began?" "Yes, I do. Every Sunday, Dorothy and I go to the original spring to drink a glass of water and give thanks for everything that happened." "And what do you feel when you are there?" "We feel gratitude. gratitude for having discovered that sometimes the greatest treasures are hidden in the most unlikely places. Harold Mitchell passed away peacefully at 85, sleeping in his home overlooking the mountains and the company he had built with his own hands. Dorothy was by his side, just as she had been throughout the extraordinary journey they had lived together. His funeral was one of the largest ever seen in the region. Thousands of people attended to say goodbye to the man who had transformed not only his own life, but also the life of his entire community. During the ceremony, Rebecca read a letter that Harold had written to be opened only after his departure. "Dear friends, if you are hearing this letter, it is because my earthly journey has come to an end. I want you all to know that these were the happiest years of my life, not because of the successes achieved, but because of the wonderful people I met along the way. The company we built together must continue to grow, but never forgetting the values that brought us here. Honesty, hard work, respect for people, and commitment to the community. Always remember, no matter how many stones life places in your path, with determination, work, and the right people by your side, you can build anything. The land I received as a humiliation turned into the greatest blessing of my life. May each of you learn to see the blessings disguised as obstacles that cross your paths. Thank you for everything. It was an honor to share this journey with you. With affection and eternal gratitude, Harold Mitchell." After the letter was read, there wasn't a dry eye in the place. Harold's story had touched hearts and transformed lives in a way he himself had never imagined. The company continued to prosper under Rebecca's leadership, faithfully following the principles left by its founder. The spring continued to gush pure water, the factory continued to produce millions of bottles annually, and hundreds of families continued to have their livelihoods secured. The St. Harold Foundation expanded its activities across the country, helping thousands of mature entrepreneurs restart their lives through work and dignity. The technical school he had founded graduated hundreds of qualified young people, many of whom became successful business owners in their own communities. But perhaps Harold Mitchell's greatest legacy was the living proof that there are no dreams too small or people too simple to build extraordinary things. His story became a legend in the region and an inspiration to the entire world. Books were written, films were produced, and universities created case studies based on his journey. Dorothy lived another 10 years after her husband's passing, personally overseeing the preservation of the spring and Harold's memory. She often received visitors from all over the country who came to see the place where it all began. "Mrs. Dorothy," visitors would ask, "what was the secret to your husband's success?" "There was no secret," she would always reply. "He had faith, faith that things could get better, faith in people, and faith that God never abandons those who work with honesty." When Dorothy also passed away, the spring was turned into a public memorial, open for all who wished to visit the place where one of the most beautiful stories of American overcoming had begun. A bronze plaque installed at the site bears the inscription that summarizes the entire journey. Here, where once there were only rejected stones, a simple man proved that destiny can surprise those who have the courage to turn obstacles into opportunities. The spring water continues to flow crystal clear and pure, just as stories continue to spring forth from people who are inspired by Harold Mitchell's example to not give up on their dreams, no matter how many stones they find along the way. And so, the land that was once given as a humiliation became an eternal symbol of hope, proving that sometimes destiny surprises us exactly when we least expect it, turning our greatest defeats into the most extraordinary victories of our lives. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this moving story of overcoming by Harold and Dorothy. Do you believe the forgiveness shown by Harold was the right attitude? Do you know someone who went through a similar situation of overcoming? Leave your comment sharing your experience. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other inspiring stories like this one. Your participation is very important to us.